We keep moving forward. Drones attacked Saratov last night. Preliminary reports indicate a strike on the local oil refinery. There are several sources of fire. Numerous videos are being posted online showing a cloud of black smoke rising over the industrial area. The Saratov oil refinery is one of the largest in the Volga region. It is part of the Rosneft company. The plant has already been attacked by drones several times and has had to halt operations on multiple occasions. Drones also struck another oil depot at the village of Matveyev Kurgan in the Rostov region overnight, as well as the Lazareva oil pumping station in the Kirov region. It is 1,200 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. We are joined by Serhiy Bratchuk, military expert and spokesperson for the Ukrainian Volunteer Army. Mr. Serhiy, as always, we are glad to have you with us.
Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the Defense Forces. Happy Kyiv Day and Holy Trinity. Victory and peace to us.
Likewise. Thank you very much. Mr. Serhiy, we suggest starting, well, considering the background behind me. How was the night in the Russian Federation? We emphasize the systematic and very consistent nature of our strikes. What's next?
Well, first of all, regarding the Saratov oil refinery, this plant has already been hit for the 14th time. I hope it will finally come to a halt. It's not very fair because it works for the front and contributes to killing. That's why it's clear that it must be stopped. And this should also affect the Russian army's supply of fuel and lubricants. As for the Kirov region, you already mentioned that it's an oil pumping station. Crude oil from Siberia is transported to the next stages, namely oil refineries, and then it is turned into diesel fuel, gasoline, and once again ends up at the front. We can see that the work is systematic, and it concerns not only the territory of the Russian Federation, but also our temporarily occupied territories. I was actually right about the Rostov region. Accordingly, today Matveyev Kurgan was set on fire, as I understand it, in honor of the day of the Ukrainian capital, just like its predecessors, the Saratov oil refinery and Lazareva in the Kirov region. The work is systematic, you see, and at one time we talked on our broadcasts about how perhaps we lack the capability to attack, including the relevant logistical routes, so that this oil would not only be pumped through pipelines, but also so that fuel tankers would burn as well and not reach the front. And we can see that this comprehensive work began some time ago in the temporarily occupied Ukrainian territories. And in fact, this issue of fuel, access to fuel for both the Russian army in the near future and for the civilian occupiers, today this issue has been supplemented with yet another piece of the puzzle. Of course, I am talking about our territories in the Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk, and Kharkiv regions where logistics are being targeted today. And in fact, even if, as you see for now, supplies might still be coming from the Saratov oil refinery, though I'm not sure about that, these will actually be destroyed by our drones right on the relevant logistics routes. So the work continues, it doesn't stop, and to be honest, Ukraine's capabilities are pleasantly surprising. Every day, without a break. The only time there's a pause is when Ukraine takes on certain commitments and adheres to them. Of course, I'm referring to and recalling the so-called ceasefire that took place at the beginning of May, but as they say, everything was done honestly. We are actively targeting and focusing our efforts on the military-industrial complex and the vital oil refining and processing sectors of the Russian Federation, to put it more precisely and specifically. We are focusing on the foundational economic and the strategic military economic components of the Russian Federation.
So, and these strikes, taking this opportunity, Mr. Serhiy, we can sum up the week. These strikes are vivid examples of deep strikes. In addition, this week, together with our viewers, we heard a phrase like logistical lockdown. So, and accordingly, this week, together with our viewers, we saw a lot of videos showing things happening on the roads in the operational depth of the temporarily occupied territories. I mean, that road near Alchevsk, Debaltseve. Something is constantly happening near Mariupol. Mr. Serhiy, a few words about the prospects of a logistical lockdown and about what is happening on the roads, that they are even repainting vehicles.
Here's another phrase, the illusion of a blockade. You see, the modern Russian-Ukrainian war is adding a lot of new things to the Muscovite language. And these new things are not always pleasant for the Russians. So I'm grateful that you mentioned Debaltseve specifically because it's coming back as is Ilovaisk, at least in our information space, and not only there. Because today, the capabilities of our strike drones, and not just drones, are reaching even those locations that unfortunately have been under temporary occupation for quite a long time. But this burning out of enemy logistics, this destruction of their resources, has started to happen even in what seemed to be the operationally safe rear of Russian forces. As of today, Donetsk region, well, actually Donetsk itself, as you know, military targets there are already suffering from Ukrainian strikes. You mentioned Donetsk region as well. Let's continue. I already mentioned Luhansk region, and this work has also begun in Kharkiv region. This isn't something that was prepared in just one day for this logistical lockdown. That is, Defense Minister Fedorov is already voicing what is happening now and what will happen in the future. Well, in fact, if we look at today's losses, and I'll try to connect this, 1,500 Russian occupiers, orcs, met their end in Ukraine. This is exactly about those 50,000 destroyed occupiers that Fedorov mentioned. So you see, there is still some kind of mathematical calculation behind all this. I have no doubt about that. A logistical lockdown. What we're actually seeing, let's recall the so-called Novorossiya Highway, the Tavrida Highway, which is connected to Crimea. What we're seeing is just a small part of the videos that can currently be shown both to our viewers and for us to savor and enjoy. It's burning, it's ablaze. As for repainting, well, first of all, we're talking about the fact that the Russians have always hidden behind civilian vehicles, and now this so-called Gauleiter Saldo pops up and says, stop all civilian vehicles, let the military trucks go faster. Do you know how much the Russian occupiers hated on him? Because they are used to hiding behind civilians, and now they're being given the right of way. A military truck carrying the appropriate cargo has to drive at least 120 kilometers per hour on all these highways. 120. Just imagine that Ural truck, repainted, say pink, barreling down the road at 120 kilometers per hour. Well, our operators get such satisfaction hitting it, and that's how it will continue. And here, they're even talking about crosswalks, among other things, and they're completely serious about it. I'm not saying that we do all this work with a smile. No, it's hard work, extremely difficult. The enemy is already coming up with some responses for us. Of course, they'll be building corridors and putting up those anti-drone nets. We understand that too. But there's a nuance here, actually, because these anti-drone routes, for example, that they'll be blocking off, will be under our control, under the fire control of the defense forces. So it won't be very easy for them to do this. That's why this logistical lockdown, is spreading across the temporarily occupied territories like an octopus. Add to this our potential strikes on the gateways to Crimea. I'm talking about the isthmus. There are 2 bridges there. If we destroy Armyansk and Perekop, it will no longer be just an illusion of a blockade. The railway, Jankoy. Let's also remember the port of Berdyansk, which is not being overlooked either. It's one of the main ports today for Russian military cargo. So as we can see, the work is targeted. Once again, the preparation took more than a month accordingly. There are opportunities. Yes, they need to be scaled up. But there's no doubt our headquarters have modeled this situation, calculated the resources, and I hope there's more to come.
Mr. Serhiy, we literally have just 3 minutes left. And we have this concept here called the under-speaker question. Here's the next phrase. It has been waiting and is still waiting for your response. Since we are already summing up, well, it just happened this way, we are summing up the week with you. This week, the Kremlin dictator Putin said the following: our troops, I'll translate, are advancing in all directions every single day. He says, every blessed day. Your response to this statement?
I think that before they show this map to him in the Kremlin, they flip it over like a mirror, because we understand perfectly well that today this is not the case at all. I'm not saying that the enemy isn't advancing. Near Pokrovsk, the enemy is making progress. On the other hand, let's put it this way. Just recently, we announced that the defense forces, of course, on the Oleksandrivka section of the front, are conducting counterattacks and achieving results. Along the entire line of contact, absolutely everywhere without exaggeration, certain events are taking place that require information silence. I am very grateful to Ukrainian media professionals. At last, we've learned to talk less about it and only speak when the military has made a statement. And these counterattacks are precisely the tool that made it possible, among other things, to implement this logistical lockdown. Because without this pressure on the front from our side, well, I think there wouldn't even be talk about these strikes, among other things. Everything is interconnected. Victory is still far off. There is still a lot of time ahead. But you see, today we can truly say that perhaps for the very first time in our history, we finally have such incredibly unique and powerful opportunities to try to seize the strategic initiative on the battlefield right now? Well, when it comes to the matter of the individual known as the Valdai recluse who lives in isolation, well, it might be a good idea to let them present him with a few more detailed geographical maps for his review when we finally get the chance to meet with him in person later on.
It seems that our technical connection unfortunately let us down a little bit right at the very end of the segment, but I truly believe, my dear friends and viewers, that the core point Mr. Serhi was making is perfectly clear to everyone, and it is a sentiment that we all certainly share and support together. Mr. Serhi, thank you very much for your answers, explanations, and clarifications. Serhi Brachik, military expert, spokesperson for the Ukrainian Volunteer Army.